The Comprehensive Guide to Apologetics. Jester Jekyll's Critique, Chapter 1. Good day, folks! Now that we've read Chapter 1, What is Apologetics and Why Do We Need It? By Norman L. Geisler. And now that we read it, let's explore a few objections we could raise concerning its contents. Without further ado, let's get into it. Again, my apologies for any mispronunciation of names that I've done in the past and I'll probably do in the future. I will do my best, though, to pronounce them correctly. Alright, there are actually a number of objections we could raise concerning this chapter, e.g., quote, the assaults, parenthesis, objections to Christianity's, end parenthesis, mine, come primarily through proponents of evolutionary theory and from liberal progressives seeking to advance their social agenda of abortion and gay rights, end quote. One problem many Christians, so there's one issue would be that many Christians believe in evolution. So it's not just a contention with science or a contention with skeptics, whatever you want to slide in there. It's also a contention with other Christians who believe that evolution is true. And the other thing is, not every liberal or social progressive is pro-choice. And there's not any good reason to disallow gay people from having the same privileges and rights as their normative counterparts. So what do you do with someone like me who has progressive ideals, but who also has conservative ideals? Additionally, we live in a country that values freedom. That being the case, one should never have to demonstrate why they should be allowed to be free. One should always have to demonstrate why freedom should be restricted. Chapter 1 mentions a number of prominent atheists becoming Christians. Yeah, I don't care. A lot of Christians become atheists. It doesn't matter. Neither of those facts demonstrates the truth of Christianity or the truth of atheism, respectively. Just because somebody believes a thing doesn't mean that thing is true, or just because somebody doesn't believe a thing doesn't mean that non-belief is true. I would also want to know the specifics of each case. Chapter 1 gives scant little specifics. And the reason why I would want to know those specifics is because it could be the case that these people were atheists or non-believers of some type for bad reasons, and then they became Christians for similar bad reasons. So I don't have enough information to really give judgment on whether or not these conversions are the actual results of a god or mistaken human activity. By the examples given, I don't think we are able to judge whether or not apologetics were actually affected in those situations. It seems to be the case in at least one example of Don Bly, where the atheist had believed for bad reasons and then converted for possibly equally bad reasons. I don't know how you would convince someone into agnosticism from an atheistic position, because neither are mutually exclusive. Like, for instance, I'm an agnostic atheist who's very open-minded, evidenced by my channel and by my willingness to engage with a book like this. So under this model, how does an agnostic atheist who is open-minded get convinced into a position he already holds? My point being, one, atheists are not all of one stripe. If a Christian would like to dialogue with an atheist, then you would do well to understand each individual atheist position of which you are dialoguing, rather than constructing a fictitious straw man prior to such a dialogue. And then number 2, if you are going to label anything as evidence, then you should make sure that your primary fact, the one you wish to demonstrate, is supported by secondary facts, to the degree that belief in any posited conclusions are both sound and sufficient to warrant such belief in the primary fact. To the point of atheists converting to Christianity, again, this happens a lot. And so does the deconversion. And if Pew Research polling is to be believed, then the category of nons, or the non-religious people group, are growing faster than Christianity is growing. So the real question isn't whether or not individuals will convert because of apologetic efforts. The real question pertains to the categorical growth versus individual conversion rate. Another example, quote, "Further, the intellectual assent that something is true or exists is prior to belief in, parenthesis, volitional trust of the heart, end parenthesis, something. Evidence and reason are important to establish belief that something is true. It is reasonable to assume unbelievers will want good reason to believe that Jesus is the Savior of the world prior to placing trust in Him." Okay, so the contention I have with this paragraph is this. Geisler claims that belief is volitional trust of the heart. Now, first of all, I don't know what volitional trust of the heart means. That's the nonsensical statement to me. But belief isn't a choice. And if you think belief is a choice, then go ahead and believe that you can sprout wings and take off into the sky. So no, quote, "The intellectual assent that something is true or exists is prior to belief in something." That's not true. Either you're convinced something is true or you're not convinced something is true. The convincing is usually the result of good evidence. At least it should be the result of good evidence. Quote, "Defensively, apologetics answers any sincere objection or question about the Christian faith. For example, when objections arise to the existence of God, it is important to first explain the absolute nature of truth." End quote. This, of course, leads right into the objections I have, I believe, are most apropos and would be most prudent to talk about. And that would be the 12 basic premises that Mr. Geisler offers as, quote, "Offensively, it builds a case for the Christian faith which is accomplished through 12 basic premises," end quote. So he's saying that these 12 premises will build a case for the Christian faith. Now, 10 of these I completely disagree with, and 2 of them are possibly debatable. So let's get right into it. 1. Truth about reality is knowable. I subscribe to the correspondence theory of truth, which basically just says the truth is real and reality is real. Basically, the truth is the universe and everything in it. And then as far as knowledge is concerned, there are a number of epistemological approaches out there, so this is going to be another point of contention when the subject of knowledge is raised. My epistemological approach could include science, skepticism, Socratic questioning, logic, etc. I don't know if I believe that human beings actually have knowledge, at least in the way that we try to define it. Knowledge is defined as justified true belief, but in 1968, Edmund Gettier exploded that Plato's supposition there. So people still use justified true belief only because there hasn't been anything better proposed. I don't know. I have a simpler approach. It's presentation. If one is going to make a truth claim about reality, I just want to know what kinds of evidence can you present that will support the claim, so we can study it and understand it better. Everybody, not just the people with the quote unquote special knowledge or special revelation, as you guys like to call it. So I agree that the truth exists, and the truth is the universe and everything in it. If there's something outside the universe, if that makes any sense at all, if our temporal language and our understanding of time can even be applied to a outside the universe, we don't really know. We have no idea what's outside the universe. So my epistemological approach is going to be universal. Again, that's just me. You're going to run into a lot of different people that have a lot of different ideas about what truth and what knowledge is. So the first one I'm willing to grant, because I believe the truth exists and it is knowable in some sense. So I'm willing to at least tentatively grant that the first premise is true. Okay, premise number 2. Opposites cannot both be true. Again, possibly the language is a little clumsy. I think he's referring to the logical law of non-contradiction. Basically, A cannot ever equal not A. So, again, tentatively, I would agree if he is talking about violation or he's talking about the logical law of non-contradiction. So I will tentatively agree with premise number 2. Premise 3. It is true that the theistic God exists. Again, this is more clumsy language, but it seems, because what's a theistic God? But it seems like he's saying, basically, it's true that God exists, and I do not agree with this premise. One would need to clearly define their God, its characteristics, and then provide supporting evidence. I don't think first cause or cosmological arguments hold any water, because no one can demonstrate where the singularity came from. Again, if came from is proper language pertaining to the singularity, because we don't even know if our conception of time can be applied. I think the ontological argument for God suffers the same flaw that presuppositionalism suffers from. I mean, you can presuppose anything, and the ontological argument, you could just conceive of a God that's greater than the Christian God. Like, for example, most theologians don't believe that God could do anything that's outside his nature, or that's illogical, like God can't create a rock that he couldn't lift, that type of stuff. Well, I can just conceive of a God that transcends logic. He is both able to do logical and illogical things at the same time in the same way. Don't try to understand it. It's the almighty, awesome, wonderful, illogical, logical God. There, now I've just conceived of a greater God than the Christian God. See, the problem is within the language of the ontological argument. This is what most people point out. What is maximal? Like a maximal or maximally great is the phrase. What is maximally great? I also think that if premise number 3, it is true that premise number 4, miracles are possible. If miracles are possible, then teleological arguments or fine-tuning arguments, you can kiss them goodbye. Because it could all just be one giant miracle. You don't need to fine-tune the universe. God miracled it. You don't need to posit this God as a designer. He just miracles it. Once you introduce magic into the mix, all that's philosophically possible becomes probable, which includes competing supernatural claims in other religions and spiritual traditions. Realistically, they cannot all be true, but they can all be false. So I reject premise 4, as I do not believe miracles are possible. Basically, miracles are a suspension of natural law. I don't think you can suspend natural law. Because whenever we try to investigate miracles or the suspension of natural law, we never find evidence that the miracle actually took place. Premise number 5. Miracles performed in connection with a truth claim confirm the truth of God through a messenger of God. I don't know, this seems like more than one premise to me. What is a messenger of God? How would you define that? And what if you're dealing with a trickster God and he wanted to purposely tell a lie? So he has a quote-unquote messenger of God perform this miracle. Would then the lie become truth because the messenger of God performed the miracle? So I reject premise number 5 because I don't know what a messenger of God is, and I think it's possible that if a miracle would be, let's say if a miracle was possible, then it's entirely within the realm of possibility that a trickster God could be trying to lie to you. So no, a miracle performed through the messenger of God doesn't necessitate that what is said by the messenger of God is true. Again, you need to demonstrate this God exists, and then demonstrate miracles are possible, and then demonstrate that this God of yours has messengers of God. Then demonstrate that every time a messenger of God performs a miracle, it's always in connection with a truth claim. So I reject premise number 5 because of the clumsy language and because I don't believe miracles are possible. And even if they were possible, they don't necessarily mean that they're going to equate to a truth claim. Premise 6, the New Testament documents are reliable, parenthesis, textually and historically, end parenthesis. No, I don't believe that. The best that could be said about the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, is that it's historical fiction. You'll find some real people in there. You'll find some real trade routes. You'll find real cities, stuff like that, real mountains. But nothing in history can ever corroborate supernatural claims. Because there's no way, first of all, there's no way to investigate the supernatural. And if you want to believe supernatural claims in the Bible, then you have to believe supernatural claims in other historical documents too. That, claims of resurrections and healings and all kinds of stuff. I mean, do you believe in the miracle claims of other texts, like the Bhagavad Gita or the Quran or any other quote-unquote spiritual text of other gods? Do you believe such miracle claims or spiritual or supernatural claims? Do you believe these things? Probably not. The chances are you probably do not believe those claims. Well, just take your unbelief and why you don't believe those claims and then apply them to your own religion, and that's usually why others don't believe in your religion or your practices or beliefs. Namely, they probably don't find your claims to be true for various reasons. just like you don't find their claims to be true for various reasons. My whole epistemological endeavor is to do the best that I can to match my internal beliefs with external reality. Like, I want to know what's true. I want to know what's true within myself, and I want to know what's true outside of myself. And when evaluating truth claims about the world around me, I try to use methodologies and epistemological tools that give, decent results. Logic, things such as Socratic questioning. I do my best to evaluate any evidence given to see if the evidence actually supports the claim. Things of this nature. I'm trying to ascertain the world as it is, not how I want it to be. Premise 7. As witnessed in the New Testament, Jesus claimed to be God. Well, I guess there could be some debate about whether or not he actually claimed to be God. The Jews certainly seem to think that he claimed to be God. That's why he was executed for blasphemy. So there is that. But at the same time, I don't believe the gospel narratives are true. I'm willing to accept that there may have been a real guy running around with disciples, and the Romans decided to go ahead and execute him because the Jews didn't like the guy because he was blaspheming. I get it. That's probably true. But the New Testament Jesus does not exist. It's fiction. It's all mythological supposition. So basically, I'm willing to grant that the New Testament does make the claim that Jesus is God, but again, it doesn't mean that the claim is true. So this is the verse that I actually have another a possible contention with. So it was, or not verse, premise. So premise number 7 and premise number 1 are both, I semi-agree with them. Let's say that. Premise number 8, Jesus' claim to be God was proven by a unique convergence of miracles, e.g. resurrection. Again, I don't believe miracles are possible, and I don't believe miracles can demonstrate truth claims either, if they were possible. So I reject premise number 8 outright. Premise number 9, therefore Jesus was God in human flesh. That's just a total non sequitur. I reject premise number 9. Absolutely, because it does not follow from anything else. Premise number 10, whatever Jesus, who is God, that's in parenthesis, affirmed as true is true. I don't believe that to be true either. Again, I don't think the Jesus character found in the Bible is a real person, and I don't believe that the words attributed to him are actually his words. So I reject number 10 for those reasons. Premise number 11, Jesus affirmed that the Bible is the Word of God. Well, we know that's not true, because during his lifetime, the New Testament wasn't even written yet, so he couldn't have affirmed that the Bible was true. The best he could have done was affirm the Old Testament was true. So, number 11, rejected. 12, premise number 12, therefore it is true that the Bible is the Word of God, and whatever is opposed to any biblical truth is false. Again, premise number 12 is entirely dependent on the rest of the premises being true, and I don't think that they are true. So premise number 12 is rejected because of that. If the apologetics found in this book are based on these 12 premises, then the objections I've raised, and I'm sure there are other objections as well that could be raised. They need to be addressed. Isn't that the whole point of apologetics? As this is the first chapter, we really haven't gotten into the meat of this book. I mean, there are several more chapters to get into. So the questions I've raised could very well have answers within this book. And as we move along, perhaps we'll discover that. From now on, I will be seeking answers to the questions and concerns I've raised, and I'll most likely be asking additional questions. I don't know. We'll have to see as we continue.
I am the one, the way your son don't need a gun to get
Well, folks, that's what I got for you today. As always, be well on your journey.